Next topic by Dr. Rajpal.
Small,
please.
Actually, it is our routine policy to first these patients undergo thrombosuction. It's been going on for the last 4 years, and we hope to present our series in this year's TCT. And we do not stent them. We do only a thrombosuction, and 36 to 48 hours later restudied them. And if the lesion is significant, then we stent them. If it's not significant, then we just leave them alone. And 20% of these patients do not need stents. And we have got angiographic follow-up on these patients. Now we started this in 2008. So now we've got angiographic follow-up on 80 of these patients. And 20% do not need stents.
Yeah, we will quickly go to your subject.
So, I mean, I think there may be some overlap, but we look at saphenous vein grafts, PCI, and how it is different from a standard PCI. And as you know that almost 12 to 20% of patients have graft occlusion at the end of 1 year and 50% at the end of 10 years. So when a saphenous vein graft occludes or has a problem in the first 1 month, it's almost always due to graft thrombosis. And if it occurs at the end of, in the first 1 year, it's due to intimal hyperplasia. And when it occurs subsequently after 1 year, it's almost always due to atherosclerosis. So a graft PCI, saphenous vein graft lesion is totally different from a standard coronary lesion for the following reasons. You see these the huge atheroma burden, cholesterol clefts, and massive amount of thrombus. So this seriously differentiates SVG PCI is certainly different from a standard PCI for this one simple reason. And the plaques are usually concentric, diffuse, highly lipid rich with a high content in thrombotic material and inflammatory cells. And they are very friable and prone to thrombotic occlusion. So the single most factor which differentiates an SVG PCI from a PCI of the routine coronary de novo lesion of the coronary artery is distal embolization. And it's not just thromboembolization, it is atherothromboembolization. So once you say there's atherothromboembolization, drugs do not help because it's whatever drugs, it's not platelets. You know, this thrombus, atherosclerotic material sludge will never be cleared by a GP2B3A or any type of thrombolysis. So this is a single factor which actually differentiates the two. Now, whenever you plan an SVG PCI, I think the first thing you must look at it is, instead of putting in a stent in a degenerated graft with a very high rate of restenosis and recurrence and peri-procedure morbidity and mortality, you must look at the native coronary tree. See if you can open the native coronary tree. That is the first choice. Because you have a high peri-procedural epi, mortality, restenosis and reocclusion. And restenosis, more than target lesion revascularization, it is target vessel revascularization because a lot of these patients have 30 to 40, 50, 60% lesions which in the next few months progress. So once there is a degenerated SVG graft which needs a procedure, and you tackle the tightest lesion, above and below there are 40%, 50% lesions which progress very fast. So this is progression of disease outside the stented segment. So before you do an SVG PCI, look at the native vessel very closely. Even if it's a total occlusion, that would be the first choice. And then there are some subsets which make an SVG PCI at higher risk. Females, patients with renal insufficiency, and if you feel the angiographic volume of that plaque is huge. So, what about an occluded SVG? It's almost always better not to touch an occluded vessel, except in the setting of one setting, and that will be in the setting of acute myocardial infarction. This is because the results are abysmal, restenosis rates are very high. And so again, look at the native vessel. Embolic protection devices. This is currently the standard of care for treatment of any saphenous vein graft lesion. This is because you get down the incidence of the peri-procedural CK bump, which is around anywhere between 50%, 15 to 45%, comes to 10%. And what is more important is, compared to a native PCI, suppose you do an LED diagonal bifurcation, you lose a diagonal and the CK goes up, that does not have a great correlation with mortality. Whereas a similar CK bump following an SVG PCI has a strong correlation to outcome at 30 days and at 1 year. So any CK bump following a SVG graft PCI is of great relevance. And therefore, embolic protection devices become more important. And this is the most powerful predictor of late mortality is a CK bump following an SVG PCI. Because looking at embolic protection devices, there are a lot of devices. Each one has to choose distal protection, distal embolic filters, proximal balloon occlusion devices. This is each one has a choice, and there are some separate indications for each of these. Like, of course, this is a distal protection device, and this is occlusion. Following the procedure, you aspirate and then you stent. After stenting, you aspirate and then you get good flow. Let us not go into these, because each one of these will have a particular advantage and a disadvantage. This is something which is well known, so we will not get into this. Depending upon user, there is no great difference between any particular embolic device. No embolic device, embolic protection device has proven to be superior to another. Only thing, the indications will change. If you have got a very distal lesion, probably you cannot put a distal protection device. You will have to put a proximal device. So, like that, each one has its own advantages and disadvantages. So, time will not permit us to go into this. But one thing you must remember is that the filter devices will never protect against neurohormonal mediators like serotonin, thromboxane, or endothelin, which are known to cause slow flow and no flow. Only a proximal balloon occlusion, only an occlusion device will actually protect. So now we look at what's the role of direct stenting. So direct stenting in a patient with is always preferred, even in a de novo lesion, but it has great importance in a patient with an SVG PCI, because again the CK bump is much less, and this correlates with mortality. So direct stenting, if possible, is a good option in SVG PCI. So these are the differences. Use of embolic protection devices. Make sure you look at the native vessel. Make sure you try and do direct stenting. Now you look at, this is a very interesting study done in a small population of 200 patients, a Korean study. And this gives us some insight into why SVG PCI is different from de novo coronary artery lesion PCI. One is they undersize their vessels, undersize the stent. So the stent artery ratio was 0.89, that is, the stent was slightly smaller. Plaque intrusion volume was less. The CK bumps were less, and there was no increase in 1 year events. And these patients did better. So what they suggested was undersizing stents in SVG grafts was not a bad idea. And so then when you undersize a stent, then the next question is, what about stent thrombosis? And you'll have uncovered struts and restenosis. But that did not bear out at the end of 1 year. What was proved was CK-MB rise was much less. And this did not translate to an increased incidence of stent thrombosis and restenosis. So another very interesting study again is the VELATI study, and we are looking forward to VELATI 2, because this will be one of the rare studies which will give us some more data on this. The VELATI 1, if you look at why do SVG grafts do badly, interventions more than target lesion revascularization, it's target vessel revascularization, in the sense that unstented moderate restenosis quickly catch up in the next 6 months to 1 year. So what these people did was, any patient who underwent an angiogram for post-op CABG patient underwent an angiogram for chest pain. They treated the culprit lesion and they also stented all their clinically they looked at the clinically non-significant lesions like moderate lesions, 30 to 60%. So actually now we are awaiting VELITY 2 results will come I think in 2015. So now covered stents, let us not go into this. There is no evidence to suggest covered stents help, except, well, the M-Guard. No, that data is not yet out. But the standard covered stents are of no value. Symbiote, all studies uniformly showed no good results. Then the next thing is drug-eluting stents versus bare metal stents. If you look at this first study, the risk, where Cypher stents were implanted in patients with in SVG grafts, there was a huge broha and people said that this is going to be the best thing. At 6 months, Cypher did very well. But at the end of 1 year, the mortality was, the mortality in 1 year was had grossly increased, and there was a huge increase in mortality in patients who had received SVG stents, cephalexin grafts stents with Cypher. Then there are a lot of other studies which are done, but finally the real, possibly the data which will come is of 6,000 patients, they analyzed, it was a Bayesian meta-analysis, and they found that stenting was safe. Using drug-eluting stents was safe. Look at that. Imagine that, you have somebody saying that, it is possibly safe. That statement was TVR and TLR come down by almost 40 to 50%, and there is no change in death, MI or stent thrombosis, whether you use a bare metal stent or no. And finally, when you want to choose between a bare metal and a drug-eluting stent, osteal location drug-eluting stents do better, and diabetics, long lesions. So, in summary, always perform an SVG PCI after placement of an embolic protection device. The mortality comes down, except in one setting. The only setting wherein you need not use an embolic protection device is when there is a technical problem and it's not a degenerated graft and it's an anastomotic site lesion. So after that there is no graft at all. There is no thrombus burden. Secondly, be ready to face no reflow. GP2B3s have no use. Perform direct stenting. DES, yes, is useful. Have a look at the native vessel and always go for the native vessel instead of going for a venous graft. Avoid total occlusions. Again, exception is acute MI. Be less aggressive. Don't post-dilate too much. Accept a residual because you will cause plaque embolization. And be more aggressive in treating lesions which are not so severe. That evidence has come from VELITY. Covered stents have no role. Thank you for a patient listening.
Anybody from the audience have one or two quick questions to Rajpal? Rajpal, I wanted to just say this. The 2B3A blockers, if you look at the data carefully, this conclusion that they are of no use is drawn from those very old studies where the patients were not really randomized to 2B3A blocker versus no 2B3A blocker. These are done in the long time back before these newer antiplatelets have come, and also they were not randomized actually. They were done for some other purpose, and in that study they found that 2B3A blockers did not help. So one cannot really say a final word on 2B3A. I know you will differ with me. I just want to say my opinion about this. If there is a lot of thrombus burden, perhaps in a given case 2B3A blocker can be given. It's not so much that it is contraindicated. That's what I feel. Another point is the covered stents once again. You see, all these, even Symbiote trial, and there is another trial also around the same time it was done. Both those trials have put the covered stents in the back burner. They were not really given the clopidogrel for a long time. These were trials where clopidogrel was not given any importance. They just did it with covered stent, And that was one of the reasons, the criticism against the Symbiote and the other trial by, I think, Antonio Colombo, that was done with the Zomed stent. They did not particularly concentrate on usage of clopidogrel, and a lot of patients who had complications were not on clopidogrel. And these are reasons. So actually my own experience is, if you have a badly diseased vein graft lesion, I mean a long disease of a vein graft producing acute coronary syndrome, there is no way you can treat it with any of the ordinary stents. If you do it, you will produce massive distal embolization. So in a given case where there is diffuse and complex lesions of vein graft, perhaps covered stent has a role. Ramesh, I think, wants to say something.
Just a point on covered stents. For vein graft disease especially, self-expanding covered stents like Fluency is a totally different animal compared to balloon expandable cell.
Ramesh, you're not audible. Can you say
Yeah,
louder?
I can't hear you.
Okay. As far as covered stents in vein graft disease, self-expanding covered stents like Fluency is a different...
Like?
Fluency. Fluency is a nitinol covered stent. They have a different long-term outcome compared to balloon expandable covered stents, particularly for vein graft disease. So that's never been looked at. It is single stent. That has never been looked at in major studies, but there are very good single center experiences.
I don't know how popular that is in literature, and is that something which is popularly used?
Yeah, I mean, whoever has been, it's been very well used in peripheral vascular disease.
No, in coronaries.
Vein graft disease.
Yeah, coronaries.
Yes, it has been used. The single center experiences have been pretty good.
Possible.
Yeah, you have anything to...
No, I mean, actually, this last year also there was this controversy of using this GP2B3 inhibitors.
Okay.
And we looked at it very closely. In fact, the mortality was higher in those patients who were given GP2B3 inhibitors when they did analysis. In fact, the SAFER trial showed that. And the second thing is, there is rationale to believe that they may not be very useful because a lot of this embolization is atherothrombotic material. So that is not going to go. If it's platelet, if it's thrombus, then you use a GP2B3, there's some rationale. But if there's a lot of if there's a lot of atheroembolic material, it may not. The only study which showed some benefit was when a distal protection device was used. Then there was some benefit when it was used along with GP2B3. But that is also, the word is not here. But anyway, it can be.
Anticoagulation in vein graft disease, you have to differentiate between acute presenters versus chronic disease. They're two different things.
I think generally in cases which are stable cases, if you are doing SBG interventions, it makes sense by not using glycoprotein 2B3, but then there are cases where patients present with acute coronary syndrome and sometimes acute MI, and those cases the thrombotic load is more. There I think you are benefited with glycoprotein 2B3.
Sure.
Invariably both the cases, probably it is logical to use a protection device.
Rajpal, do you often see vein graft cases coming for angioplasty nowadays? Has the frequency of intervention for vein grafts reduced in your practice?
No, in fact, they're slowly growing. Mm-hmm. It is slowly growing.
Okay.
We definitely see them, and it's a problem actually, because some of these we stent them and then they come back with problems quite in a very reasonably short
That's okay. Old patient coming back.
Yeah.
In fact, that point is very valid. That the major morbidity in vein graft disease is due to the same graft getting newer trouble at another point, and not so much due to the point where you touched it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Ramesh, what is your experience? Is the vein graft intervention becoming more frequent? Ramesh is a very big cardiologist in Philadelphia. He keeps coming to Hyderabad for live cases and demonstrations. Yeah.
No, actually, my experience in my practice, vein graft disease intervention is going down. Not as frequently, you see. I use debulking atherectomy for coronary disease. In a similar way, thrombectomy and atherectomy is a good approach for vein graft disease as a first-time approach rather than stenting. And you can actually leave residual disease if you establish good flow and you don't have no reflow state, to stop at that point in vein graft disease to prevent recurrent problems with the vein graft is actually a good approach. Then to try to get optimal, by doing more ballooning and stenting, then you end up with more no reflow state, and those are the ones who have more complications down the road.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks to Rajpal.